Hello, and welcome to your new favorite bookish podcast, Fully Booked and Caffeinated. I'm Heather.
And I'm Kelsey.
And today's episode is about the brand spanking new. This is the first time we're doing a book that literally just came out last month. So we're doing This Summer Will Be Different by Carley Fortune. And this is a best friends, brother / forbidden romance / friends to lovers romance. There's like a lot of tropes in here, but best friends, brother is definitely, I think, the heightened trope of this novel.
Yes.
So what are you drinking for this episode?
Well, I actually have another soda. Listen, I'm not a soda girl. And now I'm like, after dinner, I was like, wow, should I crack a cold one? And it's a Dr. Pepper.
Ooh,
I don't know the last time I had a Dr. Pepper.
Slaps. I love a Dr. Pepper.
I couldn't tell you the last time I had one. And I took a sip and I was like, oh, this is it. And Eric's like, yeah, it's Dr. Pepper. And I was like, no, like I forgot. So it's a Dr. Pepper kind of night.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, I also have a glass of soda, so it's cool. I got cherry Pepsi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a quick come home, give the baby a bath night, and then like quickly shove food in my face. And then so this is what we're left with for right now.
This is the quickest solution.
Exactly. So
understandable.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So Carley Fortune is a #1 New York Times and #1 Globe and Mail, which I had never heard of Globe and Mail. And then reading more on her info, it's a Canadian publication because she's Canadian.
Okay.
So.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So she's the best-selling author of this book. Her debut novel was Every Summer After, which I talked about last year. I raved about that book. And then her follow-up to that was Meet Me at the Lake, which I've not read yet. And the vibes for that one, it seemed a lot of people were let down by it. And I'm going to circle back to that later because she wrote something really cool in her acknowledgments that I just wanted to touch on. And now she wrote this one, This Summer Will Be Different. And her books have sold more than 1 million copies worldwide. So congratulations. She's an award-winning journalist, and she worked as an editor at some of Canada's top publications, including the Globe and Mail. So there you go. That's what it is.
Okay.
Toronto Life and the much beloved, now defunct weekly paper, The Grid. She was most recently the executive editor of Refinery 29 Canada, and she holds a Bachelor of Journalism from Toronto Metropolitan University. So I don't know that we've done a Canadian author before, have we? We probably have, but I just can't remember. So she spent her young life, though, in Sydney, Australia. And then in Barry's Bay, which is a tiny lakeside town in rural Ontario, and it is the setting for Every Summer After. So every novel that she writes, the location seems to be a place that holds personal meaning to her. Because I know in Meet Me at the Lake, that was a lake base in Toronto. And then this book, Prince Edward Island, she went there with her best friend.
Mm-hmm.
So she
I like that.
She goes, which I think is nice because she's writing from experience and you can feel that. I feel in her novels, like just the way that she describes everything. You get you can feel like you're there. And I think that people that visit the places they write about have a better idea of how to get you there.
And this could even be like a made up place. Like you could tell me that this was a made up place and I would believe it because 100%. Of how imaginative she is when she describes it.
Yeah. But now she lives in Toronto with her husband and 2 sons, and she's currently working on her 4th book. So I'm excited about that. Now, as always, our Goodreads description. Trusty old Goodreads. This summer, they'll keep their promise. This summer, they won't give in to temptation. This summer will be different. Lucy is the tourist vacationing at a beach house on Prince Edward Island. Felix is the local who shows her a very good time. The only problem, Lucy doesn't know he's her best friend's younger brother. Lucy and
Yes.
Felix's chemistry is unreal, but the list of reasons why they need to stay away from each other is long, and they vow to never repeat that electric night again. It's easier said than done. Each year, Lucy escapes to Prince Edward Island for a big breath of coastal air, fresh oysters, and crisp vino verde with her best friend Bridget. Every visit begins with a long walk on the beach, beneath soaring red cliffs and a golden sun, and every visit Lucy promises herself she won't wind up in Felix's bed. Again. If Lucy can't help being drawn to Felix, at least she's always kept her heart out of it. When Bridget suddenly flees Toronto a week before her wedding, Lucy drops everything to follow her to the island. Her mission is to help Bridget through her crisis and resist the one man she's never been able to. But Felix's sparkling eyes and flirty quips have been replaced with something new, and Lucy's beginning to wonder just how safe her heart truly is.
So reading this, we know that they're going to keep their promise, obviously.
Clearly, because she ends up in his bed again.
Every time.
How many times? Too many to count.
And not just the bed. Not just the bed.
No, listen, my favorite was the bathroom scene. That one was top tier.
That was good.
Mm-hmm.
That was good.
So the book follows Lucy in the present timeline as well as flashback timelines. And her friendship with Bridget leads her to visit Prince Edward Island, which is a real place, Kelsey. Apparently, it's real, so it's not imaginative. Where Bridget
I want to go there.
I know. So there's 3 rules that Bridget has for Lucy when she goes to Prince Edward Island. The first is to eat her weight in oysters. The second is to leave the city behind. And the third is to not fall in love with her brother, Wolf. So, 2 things for context. Lucy has no idea that Lucy's brother's name is Felix because she calls her brother Wolf. And kind of like the same thing, Bridget has a nickname for Lucy. She calls her B because her last name is Ashby. And it's apparently a thing in this family that they call people by their last names, which is fun. I like that. It's a fun little quirky thing. And the reason that Bridget brings up for Lucy to not fall in love with her brother is because her prior best friend, Joy, had begun a relationship with Felix. And it was great for a few years. It even ended up in an engagement. But then Joy broke things off, and it devastated not only Felix, but her friendship with Bridget. And so they're no longer friends. So now Lucy's top best friend.
I would be real nervous if my best friend was like, hey, you're going to meet my brother. Don't fall in love with him.
I know.
So I'd be like, ooh, I'm definitely going to fall in love with him, aren't I?
Once you get the warning, there's no stopping it. That's just, now it's inevitable. Now you've made it.
If you didn't say anything. Exactly. If you hadn't mentioned it, I would be like, oh, that's Bridget's little brother.
Exactly. So her first visit to Prince Edward Island, she ends up getting in a day before Bridget, which that must have been fantastic. I would just love to go somewhere by myself for the first time, getting there before somebody and get to explore the city. While it's also would give me a lot of anxiety, I think it would be nice to just kind of escape.
I think the only weird part is that she was going to be staying in Bridget's family's house without her. But I agree. It's one day of settling and exploring. And then you get to do all the best friend things.
Exactly. And she gets right to it by following those rules. She's like, I left Toronto behind. I'm going to go have some oysters, and I'm definitely not going to fall in love with her brother because, he's not even around. He's not even he's not even here. So she goes to get some oysters, and she walks in. I'm going to set the scene. She just walks into the restaurant, locks eyes with the guy shucking oysters, and there's just zing, just an instant connection. No words have been said. They don't even, it's seconds, literal seconds. They just lock eyes, and that's it. All bets are off now, officially. So she, of course, ends up going home with him, as you do when you meet someone for the first time on vacation. That just seems to be an unwritten rule. I think that every single female should go through. And she basically has the best sex of her life. It sounds like literally the best
6
sex
times.
of her life. Yeah. She's like, where has this man been all my life? So after having the best night of her life, she discovers that this man, you guessed it, Bridget's brother. Dun dun dun. So
And
basically,
they've been banging in Bridget's family's house where she's supposed to be staying.
amazing. What a plot twist.
Seriously.
So this book takes place over the next like 5 summers. So there's 5 summers, but not all of them, where Lucy has to do her best to not sleep with Felix again. She's like, I'm not going to do it. We made a pact. Like, I told him that we can't do this anymore. And she fails every single time that she's able to. So there was one year where they both were in relationships, so nothing happened, but there were plenty of other times.
Which I was happy about, by the way, because I was getting really worried that they were going to cheat on their partners. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to like that.
No.
But then they just had like a really great friendship that year. So I liked that.
I like that too. And she ends up keeping it a secret from Bridget. And when Bridget escapes to Prince Edward Island a week before her wedding, with, by the way, just no notice or reasoning, she just dips out of Toronto, goes back to Prince Edward Island, and then when she's there, she just begs Lucy to come out and be with her in Prince Edward Island. So she's basically asking her best friend, who owns this floral shop, very successful floral shop, who also is trying to prepare the flowers for her best friend's wedding. And she's just like, I need you to drop everything and come here right now. And also Lucy had this big meeting that for like a big account, so she had to like reschedule that. And so she was afraid about being unprofessional, but Bridget's her best friend. She'll drop everything.
I thought it was kind of fucked up though, because Bridget knew obviously that Lucy was going to do it. And it was so unfair. But I get it. It had to happen. I get it.
I know. And then for me too, with this situation of their friendship, there was this underlying tone of hypocrisy, because Lucy's upset with Bridget for not being forthcoming and telling her why she's there, and she's keeping all these secrets from her. But then you got Lucy over here keeping like a really, really big secret from Bridget. So you kind of already get this almost like foreshadowing thing of, does Bridget know? Because now she's just kind of being weird about things. And throughout this entire novel, when they're in the present, you kind of get the vibe that she knows about Felix and Lucy, but never like comes out and says it. And then she'll say something like, okay, no, maybe she doesn't know. But it definitely kept you on your toes. I felt that anyways, that there might have been like a chance that she might have known. And actually, my original thought while reading this was that she went to Prince Edward Island to try to get Felix and Lucy together. I don't know why. That was just like the vibe
that would be so fucked up.
Because she was like so hell-bent on like them both being there. And I'm like, oh, she knows.
Yeah, and them both I'm like, oh, it's like, it's like
this huge romantic gesture because she's getting married. So now she wants her best friend and her brother to be happy. That's not at all where that went whatsoever.
I could see why you would think that though, because she was like, Felix, you have to stay here, and he's like, I have my own house, like I'm not staying here. And then spoiler alert, he stays there. But
I know, so I was like, oh, okay. I was like, no, that's not at all what it was. So there's just basically this, they're there for what is it, like 2-3 days, and Bridget's not telling anyone what's going on. She does eventually tell Felix. And then Felix knew it wasn't his place to tell Lucy. So Lucy is ultimately the last one to know what's going on. And Bridget admits that her and her soon-to-be husband were moving to Australia after the wedding. This was the only disappointment I had with the book, was I was like, oh, that's the reveal. I was like, that's the big secret. I just was kind of like, oh, because it was such like a build up to like what was coming. And
I was nervous about it because I'm like, what are they building up towards? Like, this shit better be good. What could it like? I had no inkling of what it could be, and everything that I was thinking, I was like, well, that would be that would be disappointing, blah blah. So when it was that, I actually wasn't disappointed because I feel like, well, I feel like the way Bridget did it was messed up. Like, I know that she had to like share it in her own time and stuff, but the way that she was just stringing Lucy along and like insinuating that she didn't trust her enough to tell her, which, like, we already talked about, the trust thing is kind of like shaky. But it was just, she knew that Lucy was going to have an extremely hard time because Lucy has no independence whatsoever. And so that she was going to be pissed at Bridget.
Yeah, I agree with that completely, and which I'm going to bring it up later too, but the relationship between Bridget and Lucy is such a peculiar one because Lucy definitely depends on Bridget like massively, and she's devastated that Bridget is leaving. Like, she's does not have a good reaction to it emotionally. She's like, I don't, like, I can't handle this. But in that moment, she also admits to Bridget that she slept with Felix. And Bridget's like, oh, I know. Bridget's just like, yeah.
Weird timing, though.
I know. Bridget's like, and Lucy's like, what do you mean you know? And Bridget's like, yeah, I figured you guys had slept together. And she was like, there was one night when I woke up in the middle of the night and your door was open and you weren't in there. And I heard a noise. I heard like bed springs. So I had a feeling that you guys were sleeping together. And so she was fine with that. I guess Bridget's big concern would be Lucy and Felix trying a relationship and then it failing and then it just ruining another friendship for her, another relationship. And like, clearly Lucy means a lot to Bridget. Her her whole family is like obsessed with Lucy. And they were like shipping Lucy and Felix from the get. They were super excited that they were going to be dating.
I was kind of surprised, though, that Bridget didn't call Lucy out, because I would be like, yeah, I knew you were sleeping together. I was just waiting for you to tell me.
That too. Oh, that was an interesting.
But I guess it wasn't the time. I guess it was like, I already told you I'm moving to Australia. No. Let me not.
I know. But she didn't know the depth that Felix and Lucy felt for each other. So she's like, oh, like, so this is like serious. And they're like, yeah, basically. So like, okay, cool. So Felix and Lucy finally get together right before the wedding. And this definitely felt so rushed because now we're just together. Like, they're together. They're not really processing everything that's happened over the past 5 years, I'll even say, because they're just like,
and there was like 80 pages left of the book. So I was
I know
this isn't happening.
I know. And, you know, the fact that Lucy just found out about Bridget moving to Australia, you definitely get this feeling that she's immediately going to cling on to Felix now because she needs somebody. A year ago, she lost her aunt, who was basically, her parents are still alive, but her Aunt Stacy was like her mother figure, definitely. And now her best friend is moving across the world. So, and Felix isn't in Toronto. He's in Prince Edward Island. That's where his life is. So Lucy, it's the night of the wedding. They're about to get it on. And then they just have like this serious conversation. And Lucy's like, a light bulb goes off. And she was like, oh, I'll just leave. I'll just pick up and go move to Prince Edward Island. Like, that's the answer. And Felix, which,
not just that though, she was like, I should move in with you.
Yes, also true. And Felix, we love a mature man who's in tune with his emotions and his mental everything. Just, he was immediately, it was a wake-up call for both of them, but Felix first. And he realized that they weren't ready for this. And that Lucy really wasn't. No, let me rephrase that. Felix was ready for this. Lucy wasn't. And he was willing to kind of fall on the sword and be like, if we're meant to be, like, we'll get back together, but this just isn't going to work. And obviously Lucy's devastated because now she's losing Felix all over again. But she does eventually come to terms with it herself. She realizes that they do need the space apart. So there were a bunch of discussion questions at the back of this book, and I pulled a couple And this was one that I really liked. After Bridget's wedding, Felix and Lucy decide that it's not the right time for them to begin a relationship. What did you make of this choice? And I did just touch briefly on it, that it was such a mature choice for Felix to make, to realize that, because he wants Lucy, like he wants him and Lucy to be endgame, but he doesn't want to go into a relationship where she's not emotionally or mentally ready to begin that life with him.
I was so proud of Felix because, like you said, he's wanted this from the first summer that they even met. And he's been trying, he even says like he was trying to date other people to get his mind off of Lucy. Like it is deep for him. And the fact that he was getting everything that he wanted, but he recognized that the last time that he was in a relationship like this and gave his heart away, completely ripped his world apart when Joy left him. And now he's like, I'm going to give someone the potential to do that to me again because they're using me as a crutch, because there's a lot going on and they have to figure out, you know, Lucy has to figure out what she wants to do. Like not even just with Bridget leaving, but with the business, etc. And then when they agree, they're like, okay, we're not ready. And she's like, but can you just stay tonight? I just want you to stay with me tonight. And he's like, I don't think I should. And he left. I was like, you tell her, tell her, Felix, get the fuck out of there. Listen, I was so, because you don't see this. You don't see this.
No. And it was just
not even in books. Like you don't see, you just think like, oh, the man is just gonna, they're gonna make it work and then it's gonna end badly. He was like, I'm stopping before that can happen.
Women write men that don't exist and should exist. And that's all I'll say on that.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong at all.
No, definitely not. So after some reflection and time apart, Lucy kind of gets this time now because Bridget's gone, Felix is gone. So now it's really just her. And she gets to kind of really, I want to say like rediscover herself. And she gets to really do that introspective work. She reflects on what her dream job or her dream career is. While she loves this floral shop that she took over from her aunt, it's not necessarily her dream. She wants to have a flower farm where, I love this idea, like where people basically come to like make like little bouquets is kind of like the vibe I got. So, but she wants to just have like all this land where she grows everything herself and she's able to give back what she's created. And so that's her dream. And the only person she ever discussed that with was Felix. And Felix is very much, once she tells him that, one of the cutest things was after his visit to Toronto, when they were in relationships, they would just like start sending things. So he sent her some seeds and then she would go to she would send him a book that made her think about him, because Felix's thing was books and Lucy's thing was flowers. So this was like a back and forth thing. They would just mail each other seeds, books. And it was adorable, freaking adorable. And I loved it.
And I loved when it switched too. So after can you even call it breaking up when they were dating for like 3 days? But after they decided to call it off, and then it switched and she started sending him seeds and he started sending her cookbooks, which I was like, okay, this is more fair, because really the shipping charges that we were incurring from this relationship was not even, but then it evened itself out.
Yeah, and that's like another thing too that was nice, because this also gave Felix and Lucy the opportunity they knew each other, but this gave them the opportunity to really know each other, because then they would cook together over, FaceTime or whatever. And they would have long conversations and they were kind of really realistically rediscovering each other as well. And really getting to build a foundation, which Felix builds foundations because he makes houses.
Don't come at me with that pun.
Sorry, it just popped into my head. Anyways, so she ends up buying property in Prince Edward Island specifically to begin her own flower farm. So she's chasing her dreams and she's doing it after really thinking about it and really figuring out where she wants her life to go. And
And
so
she's doing it by herself.
she
Whereas, like,
is.
the reason she didn't tell Bridget about this dream is because she knew that Bridget would push her until she did
Mm-hmm.
it. She needed to do it in her own time.
Exactly. And she ends up surprising Felix. She doesn't tell him that this is her plan. She wants to follow him in person. So she brings him to the spot. And Felix is like, we're like trespassing. Like, it's like a kink for you. Do you like want to go do something? And no, but then Lucy's like, I own this land. And Felix is like, what? And he's so proud of her. And he's just like Bridget is definitely Lucy's biggest fan, but Felix is Lucy's biggest fan. Like, he just wants the best for her, even if that meant that they couldn't be together. Like, he wanted her to have her happiness. But obviously they have their happily ever after because it's a romance novel. Duh. But
Duh.
So who do you think, we kind of talked about this, but with Lucy and Felix, obviously, who do you think caught Felix first? It was Felix, like, hands down.
Yeah.
But
definitely.
What do you think that moment was for each of them when they realized that they were in it for more than just the physicality?
I think it's hard to know with Felix because we don't get his point of view. But with Lucy, it was definitely that summer right before when
her aunt died and she goes to Bridget's like, you have to go to Prince Edward Island, and Felix puts her up in one of the houses that he has, one of the cottages.
And they're just friends. Like, they're just friends the whole time. They just talk. They spend time together. They go to the beach. They go to the lighthouses. And then one day they start building, like you said, a little bit of a foundation and a friendship. And then one day they just start making out, and then they sleep together another 46 times in one night or whatever. And then Lucy just freaks out. She panics, and because she realizes, oh, wait, I am catching feelings.
Yeah, because she was also under the impression that Felix was still dating the woman that he was with when he had visited her in Toronto. So she's like, oh, like, your girlfriend's fine with you just spending all this time with me. Like, you don't need to worry about me. Because also Lucy's obviously grieving. She's grieving the loss of her aunt. And so she wanted that alone time. But Felix kept saying, like, oh, I'll be back for breakfast. Like,
groceries. And
exactly. And she does, like you say, like, she has an epiphany after their 46 rounds, like you said, and she's out in the living room and she sees all the books that she bought him together on the shelf, and she's just like, oh, this is more for me, and I'm not supposed to be feeling like this for you. And so she's like, I gotta go. She's like, I'm gonna head out.
And then she does just totally ditch him, and it's super awkward. But before we found out what happened, and they kept alluding to last summer, I thought she did something really fucked up. I thought I thought it was much worse than it actually was.
Yeah.
Because Felix is not stupid. I'm sure he saw exactly what it was, because the same thing happened to him. And that's why he didn't drive her to the airport. He realized that he had feelings too. So it wasn't as bad, which thank God, because, like, don't fucking hurt Felix in front of me, toots.
No, because, again, this man was reading, like, Jane Austen. He's like, I read Pride and Prejudice like 100 times.
He knows how to braid hair. He's like, oh, Bridget used to make me braid the Barbie doll's hair so I could braid her hair. I was like, please come and braid my hair. Please.
And he loves her, like, granny nightgowns. I'm like, I love that.
I need a visual of all of her outfits. Even the dress that she was wearing when they met. She said it was like literally a checkered tablecloth with off the shoulder ruffles. She sounds like Little Bo Peep to me.
I know. I love it.
And he was all about.
So one of my favorite things about this book is that Lucy and Felix weren't the only love story in the book. There was two others. We had Lucy and Bridget and their friendship. And then we had Lucy and Prince Edward Island and that, trajectory and where it took her. So first, her friendship with Bridget. After her aunt died, Bridget is truly the only family that Lucy feels like she has left while her parents are alive. The relationship with them is fraught. They don't have a good relationship. Her parents aren't supportive of her dreams. They never really were. Whereas her aunt was like her biggest fan, loved her, was supported her whatever she wanted to do. She was over the moon that she wanted to take over the flower shop. And Bridget is kind of like all she has left. And so obviously it's devastating what happens with her moving to Australia. So Bridget and Lucy's friendship is tested as they grow into their adult lives. Do you think it is possible to maintain the same depth of friendship as we get older?
No, I don't think so. Especially because I'm not saying they can't be friends and now they're literally family, but they were there for each other through very specific seasons of their lives. Bridget was homesick, so it seems like she needed Lucy as much as Lucy needed her. And then Stacy brought Bridget into this family and they created this little family together. But then Stacy dies and Bridget, meets Miles and is growing in her career and all of these things. And it's like they're changing so much and they can change together. But I feel like with Lucy's personality, it's very hard because I don't think she was fully her own person. Even before Bridget was moving to Australia, she was still mourning the fact that Bridget moved out to be with Miles. So it's like she was already having an issue with Bridget moving on because she didn't feel like she was growing. She didn't feel like she was moving on, and then she obviously like self-reflects later on. But it's just one of those things. They're always going to have that support for each other and they're always going to have that special place because of their history.
Mm-hmm.
But their relationship is going to evolve and change. And it doesn't necessarily mean it in a bad way. I mean, we talk about this all the time. When you meet people at a certain age or at a certain stage in your life, it's just a different type of friendship.
Yeah, and I was actually gonna bring, that was one of the things I was going to bring up. I feel like Bridget and Lucy met each other in that pivotal time in your adult life where you're starting to break off from your adolescent friendships and moving into your adult friendships. And we can both attest to this. Not everyone makes the cut, when you grow older. And so it's beneficial for them because they met at the time of their lives that they did and that they're able to grow together. And it also gives Lucy the opportunity to see what it feels like to be on her own finally for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And Bridget is still so supportive of everything. And she knows that even though Bridget's across the country, like she would drop anything for her. So,
and I like that we do eventually find out that Bridget needed Lucy as much as Lucy needed Bridget. It just is Bridget had more people in her life. She just did, but she still needed Lucy just as much. She still like that relationship with Lucy and Stacy completely, helped her keep her sanity, helped her with her homesickness, all of this stuff. So it's like we do find out that this was a mutual friendship, whereas in the beginning it kind of feels like Lucy is so dependent on Bridget and Bridget is just kind of like, no, I'm moving on.
So there was this quote in the book that I wanted to read for two reasons. Number one, it's literally phenomenal how it's written. And number two, I was like, obviously this book, reading it, as soon as I finished it, my biggest takeaway from it was friendship. It wasn't even the love story between Felix and Lucy. While that was so amazing and it was one of my favorites, what I took away from it was just those friendships that you make as you're older, obviously, and like you're my best friend. So reading this book, I reflected a lot on like our friendship and the few friendships that I have with other friends. And it's just this literally, I think, describes it perfectly. So I'm going to read the quote now. She looks sweet with those dresses and that smile, but B is tough. Tougher than she thinks. She hates fighting, but she won't stand down when it matters. It's one of the things I admire most about her. I used to wish that we had met earlier in life when we were kids or teenagers, but now I think we found each other at the right time. We became adults together. Our friendship is how I learned to compromise. It's how I learned that families we make are as significant as the ones we're born into. It's how I learned that the greatest loves are not always romances. I was like,
I
perfect.
love that.
That's literally our friendship written in a little
No, I
quote.
totally agree. And we talk about that. We met at the perfect time in our lives. And especially just with, going to therapy and like dealing with childhood trauma and family trauma and all this stuff. And it's like, you realize that you don't only have to rely on your family. You make your own family too. And we've talked about that so much, and it's so true and it's so important.
So the other, how I'd mentioned the other romance in this, not even romance, but just love story, is that Prince Edward Island is truly for me where I think that Lucy discovers who she is. It's the place where she grieved a really important loss. She found love there unintentionally. And she found herself. Like, she really, really did. And it was such a beautiful way that it was written. So she feels a sense of belonging when she's in Prince Edward Island. Have you ever traveled to a place that felt like home?
Yes, Las Vegas.
I hate you so much.
I'm not even kidding.
Okay. I know you're not.
This is the craziest thing. The first time I ever went to Vegas, I was 21, and I literally, it's not just because it's the freaking party capital of the universe, but I was just like, oh my God, like this is where I'm meant to be. And I actually did almost move out to Vegas with one of my friends, but I was dating Eric, so I stayed here, whatever. Thanks, buddy. Anyway, and my friend did end up moving out to Vegas and living there for a few years. But anyway, obviously that's not a long-term plan. I wouldn't be able to open a farm there or anything. But have you ever felt like that about a place where they're not drunk all the time?
So I've always felt like I belong in a small town. I've been at Kennett Square. I've been in Pennsylvania. I've been to Mystic, Connecticut. I've been to New Hope in Pennsylvania. But the place that I've really, really loved and want to go back because I felt so good there. Well, two places. I really like Boston. I don't think I could live in Boston, though. It's a little too city-like for me. I really loved Savannah.
Savannah's amazing.
That place really called to me, and I just felt like this is great. I really like it here. It has that small town feel, but it's more than that.
And I could see that. It's so like quaint feeling.
Yeah. Like I've said it before, I want to live in Stars Hollow. Like that's my dream place to go. So I always feel, I would say, my happiest in places like that, or I feel like content in places like that. So I think for me, it would probably be Savannah.
And that's kind of like what Prince Edward Island is too, like this little place where everyone knows everyone.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how it started out being her escape. And it was like, no, Lucy, you have to go back to your real life and you have to make decisions and you have to do your meetings and your flower shop and all this stuff. And then she was able to transform it into her life, not just a vacation place. She decided, okay, no, I actually want to put down roots here. And it wasn't just because of Felix, but like how awkward if she wasn't with Felix. Am I right?
It would be very awkward if she wasn't Felix, because Prince Edward Island is her place, but it's only her place because she has Felix. Like, I can't imagine her there without him.
Yeah.
One of the final discussion questions was, Aunt Stacy advises Lucy to live her life for herself and no one else. Do you agree with this advice? Why or why not?
That's a hard one. I agree with it when you're in those formative years, or not even, it doesn't even have to be a specific timeline, but I feel like you'd need to know yourself, accept yourself, find yourself before you can be there for someone else or be,
Yeah.
you know, in a relationship or like fully give your, it's that whole thing of like, you got to love yourself before anyone else
Mm-hmm.
can love you. And I'm not saying you can't discover yourself while you're with someone. I mean, Eric and I have grown up together in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship and we've changed in so many ways since we started dating. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but we also give each other the space to
Mm-hmm.
change and explore and do the things that we want to do. So it's, you do have to be somewhat selfish and you do have to put yourself first because at the end of the day, which is what happened to Lucy, you might realize that everyone has gone and you
Mm-hmm.
have nothing left and you have nothing to show for it besides working 12-hour days.
Yeah, you definitely get the vibe throughout the novel that Lucy is a people pleaser, which completely get that. So when she's finally in this place where she's losing Bridget, she's losing Felix, she kind of has to follow her aunt's advice and live her life for herself and no one else. And it's a beautiful transformation for her. But I
I
agree. I
agree.
think that you should do it, but there's kind of like a little asterisk, like
Hmm.
you should be selfish when you can, but not at the, you know,
Expense of
yes,
others.
thank you. Like you don't, if someone's life is at stake or someone else's emotions and everything is at stake, like, no, you should be a little bit more
Hmm.
cognizant of what you're doing. But yeah, I agree with what you said. I think that that's pretty spot on.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance because
Mm-hmm.
it's like you can still be discovering yourself while you're married and you know you're just discovering yourself as a mom. Like these are all changes in our lives and you're not just going to be like, no, I need to be selfish and I'm just going to not think of anyone else around me. But in
Mm-hmm.
some ways you have to be. You have to
Yeah,
make sure that you're healthy so that you can be healthy for everyone else.
100% correct. So before we get into our reviews and ratings, I'm going to read the acknowledgement page that I wanted to. Fun. That was my singular goal for this book. I wanted to have fun crafting this story. I wanted you to have fun reading it. I needed a better experience writing This Summer Will Be Different than I had with my previous novel, Meet Me at the Lake, which kicked my ass in my ego and my brain. I must have manifested it into reality because I had a blast writing this book. I loved every moment I spent with Lucy, Felix, and Bridget on Prince Edward Island, even my third draft, where I started over with 0 words, and even my sixth, seventh, and eighth drafts, where I kept
Oh my
tearing
God.
Lucy and Felix apart in various ways, over and over. From start to finish, I had fun. Fun is underrated. Fun takes a back burner as we grow up. Fun is frivolous. But what's so wrong with frivolous? Fun, I think, is something most of us need more of. We should cherish fun. It's not something that's available to everyone in this world. Bangs, magazines, chatting with readers on Instagram, so much Harry Styles. Fun is often sweeter when shared with others, and not a day goes by that I'm not thankful for the people who make my job such a tremendous pleasure. I just loved this because she's so fucking transparent and you don't see that often from authors. Like she
Hmm.
admits, yeah, my second book kind of sucked and it was hard for me and it beat the shit out of me. So when I wanted to write my
Hmm.
next book, I wanted it to be me and it like this was such a good freaking book. Like
Hmm.
I couldn't put it
I
down.
love how self-aware she is to say
Mhm.
that and also to acknowledge that she had to do it differently because how often do we see authors who write because they love writing, but
Mhm.
then once it becomes a job and it becomes a chore, they don't love it anymore.
Exactly.
So the fact that she's like, this has to be fun,
Mhm.
love that.
I loved it so much, and this is why she's one of my favorite authors. I really appreciate her being honest
Hmm.
about herself and what she went through.
And it's great advice. We
It
should all
is.
try to add
Mm-hmm.
some lightheartedness to our lives.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, am I right? Look at how many thrillers I read.
But yeah, this book was literally everything I look for in a romance. And like we talked about, I love that it was just more than romance. Like it was such a great telling of friendship and how beautiful friendship can be. The writing was top notch. Felix, hands down, my top favorite book boyfriend. There'll never be another like him. I can't even imagine.
I wish I liked oysters because I'd be in there.
And also the undertone of the steam and the spice was so, it was like perfection. Like it wasn't too much and it was just written with such maturity. And
I was thinking about that. The fact that this book had approximately 1,712 sex scenes and Butcher and Blackbird had like 4, but I was scarred by them. And this, I was like, I loved every minute of it. I mean, I did think that they were banging a little too much, just because they were like, we don't want our entire relationship to be about sex, okay? And then they would have sex 12 times.
They really were very physical. They definitely were very attracted to each other 24/7, which great. Yeah. Love that for you guys.
Yeah, but I was like, maybe say that with your clothes on. Just a thought. But anyway, it worked out for them.
Exactly. So it was really, I really liked that it wasn't so much spice. I mean, I love spice, don't get me wrong. But sometimes in my romance novels, especially this one, I like it to be a little bit more low key. So my rating is out of shucked oysters. So I gave this 5 out of 5 shucked oysters. Obviously.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked. Okay. I am giving this 4 shucked oysters.
Which is good because it's a romance and you're giving it a 4. So I'll take it.
I really loved the writing, and that's the main reason for the high rating. I also loved Casey and Bridget's family. I loved Felix. The reason that honestly I started out the book and already knew I wasn't going to give it 5 stars is because of the trope. I just don't like the best friend's brother thing.
I actually agree with you. It's not my favorite.
And I didn't like that. Like, I loved that they banged at the beginning and they didn't know. And they're like, oh my God. And then they like had sex one more time and they're like, we can't do it again. But then the fact that it kept happening over and over. And she was keeping, like you said, the hypocrisy of like keeping it from Bridget. It just, it's not a trope that I like because it's not something that I would get behind in real life. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I'm already not really rooting for them. Mm-hmm. But that being said, I really want to read Every Summer After. I don't want to read Meet Me at the Lake. I'm going to skip that one.
I have it. I'm going to read it because like I even more so I want to see like what she meant when she said, I actually kind of happy that I was able to see what she said about that book before I'm going to read it, because now I can go into it with seeing how she kind of felt when she wrote it and seeing the differences. And then you won't
be like disappointed. Yeah. Because you'll know. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I like it. I thought that some of the drama, like I said, when, she talked last summer when she ruined Felix's life, I just thought it was a little unbalanced. But overall, I enjoyed reading it. I sped through it. We love Felix. Okay, we're having some technical difficulties, so Heather had to log off, but that's all we have for you today. If you like what you heard, please make sure to follow, subscribe, and rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. If you have any book recommendations or questions for us, you can email us at fullybookedcalfpod@gmail.com. Also, be sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram at fullybookedcalfpod to see our upcoming reads. Thanks for checking us out, and remember, if you need us, we're fully booked. Bye!